I'm a shark, baby.
Hey.
I wanted to see him grow older. I wanted to see him accomplish things and have his own family. He had a full life ahead of him.
On the morning of December 29th, 2024, a famous rapper was ambushed and killed, shot multiple times inside his own apartment by people who once claimed to be his fans. Police were called to 5115 Broadway Avenue in Cleveland, Ohio, after neighbors reported hearing gunfire coming from one of the rising apartments. Inside, they found 28-year-old Carlos Banks, known in the music world as Cash Bank, unresponsive on the floor. He had been shot in the head, chest, and stomach. Just hours earlier, Carlos had been preparing for the release of his debut album, something he believed would change everything for his family. At first, no one knew who could have done it or why. But as investigators began pulling apart the events of that night, a troubling picture started to form. One of the suspects would later be identified as 27-year-old Devin Jones, a name that was about to shake everything Carlos thought he knew about loyalty, friendship, and fame. Because what unfolded that night wasn't just a robbery. It was something planned, something personal, and something far more chilling than anyone could have imagined. This is the life and death of Carlos Banks. His story leads us straight to Cleveland, Ohio. The city is best known for its rich history in industry and music, sitting on the shores of Lake Erie with landmarks like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Yet it also struggles with crime. Cleveland's overall crime rate is about 155% higher than the national average, making it one of the more dangerous cities in America. And in a city where violence is sadly not rare, the murder of famous rapper Cash Bank at 5115 Broadway Avenue was a wound that cut deeper than most. Carlos was born on January 16, 1995 in Cleveland, Ohio, the first of 10 children in a close-knit and high-energy household. As the eldest, Carlos naturally stepped into the role of leader. He wasn't just a big brother, he was a guide, a protector, and the one his siblings looked to for stability when life outside the home became unpredictable. His relationship with his younger brother Highland was especially strong, shaped by loyalty, trust, and shared ambition. Growing up in Cleveland's inner-city neighborhoods, Carlos encountered hardship early. But while others were pulled under by the weight of their environment, Carlos learned how to navigate it. He paid attention, moved carefully, and carried himself with focus. He didn't let his surroundings define him, he studied them. While the world around him pushed people into survival mode, Carlos began building something different, a way out. He didn't take the traditional route through school. While details of his academic background are limited, his reputation in the community reflected a deep intelligence.
I mean, I got some brothers that's working on it. They working and building up, but other than that, it's just me right now. I'm taking it real serious. I'm trying to get, once I get there, I'm gonna make sure, even if they ain't there, I'm gonna help them out, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, I could say I got somebody working with them.
Carlos was sharp, observant, and strategic. He absorbed lessons from experience, not textbooks, and treated every move like a calculated step towards something greater. That something turned out to be music.
Ain't the same no more. My did a lot in the cage. It ain't the same no more.
I always wanted to make music. Like, I always wanted to make music, like my whole life, even when I was a little kid. But when I started taking it serious, I was like 18, 19, you know what I'm saying? Went to the county. Niggas in that bitch, like, bruh, spit something, bro. They kept on making that, like, yeah, that's hard, bro. Like, you gotta take that serious, you feel me? Like, I'm gonna be a rapper. You know what I'm saying? I started taking it serious like 18, 19 though.
Carlos started rapping in Cleveland's underground music scene, finding in it both a voice and a purpose. He created music that reflected his own story, lyrics that spoke of loyalty, betrayal, struggle, and hustle. His sound was different from what the city was used to. It was raw, direct, and deeply personal. As he evolved as an artist, he took on the name Cash Bank and began to rise in popularity. What began as local attention quickly turned into a growing fan base that extended beyond Cleveland. At the same time, Carlos was carefully building his public presence. His Instagram account became a visual diary of his life: designer clothes, recording sessions, luxury cars, and brief glimpses of the quiet pride behind the camera. His online presence became a crucial piece of his identity as an artist. He wasn't chasing validation, he was documenting his rise. But his motivation ran deeper than fame. He also shared his life with a wife who had been with him long before the shows, the followers, or the recognition. She remained a steady presence behind the scenes, his confidant, his partner, and part of the quiet strength that allowed him to keep pushing forward.
My nails down.
She said, we can't have that. That's what she told me. I said, but I'm
a shark, baby.
Hey.
While Carlos lived much of his life in the public eye, their relationship stayed mostly private, a deliberate choice to preserve something sacred in a world where everything else felt exposed. Together, they were raising 2 children, a young daughter and a 7-year-old son named Zarek. Carlos took immense pride in fatherhood. He was present, involved, and hands-on. He brought his kids on outings, made time for their routines, and created memories that mattered. He understood what it meant to grow up without a father, and he made it his mission to be everything he never had. His wife balanced the home while Carlos balanced the grind, and through all the noise of his rising career, his family kept him anchored. But it wasn't just love that drove him. It was legacy. Every verse he wrote, every show he booked, every post he shared was for them. Fatherhood wasn't a burden, it was his foundation. It was the reason he never stopped. Still, Carlos knew that talent alone wasn't enough. His ambition didn't stop at music. He was also a strategist. He collaborated with creatives, including his personal cameraman, to produce visuals that matched the tone and quality of his music. He treated every shoot like a launch pad, every track like a statement. He wasn't just trying to make it big, he was trying to do it on his own terms. He dreamed of something lasting, something that could support his family even after the cameras stopped rolling. By late 2024, it seemed like everything was coming together. His debut album, his first full-length project, was scheduled for release on January 1st, 2025. The anticipation around it was growing. Friends, fans, and collaborators all sensed that something major was about to happen. For Carlos, this album represented more than just a milestone. It was a declaration of survival, of growth, of intent. But as the release approached, the energy around Carlos began to shift. With his rising profile came new attention, and not all of it was positive. The same social media posts that inspired his fans were also being watched by others, some with admiration, others with resentment. The smiles in public were starting to feel thinner. The rooms that once felt safe began to feel tense. He didn't speak publicly about threats. He didn't post cryptic messages or lash out online, but those closest to him noticed the change. As December came to a close, Carlos kept moving forward. He stayed locked in, focused on his work, on his family, on his goals. On December 28, 2024, he went about his day like any other, recording, planning, reaching out. He had no way of knowing that it would be his last full day alive. Because in the early hours of December 29, 2024, Just days before the album that was meant to cement his future, everything changed. When they reached the unit, the door was already open. Right then and there, they already knew that something had gone wrong inside that apartment. They called out to the inside, but no one answered. After a few moments of silence, the officers made the decision to enter. Inside, they found a horrifying scene. Lying on the floor of the living room was 28-year-old Carlos Banks, unresponsive on the floor. He had been shot in the head, chest, and stomach. Paramedics arrived quickly and attempted to revive him, but there was nothing they could do. At 3:57 a.m., Carlos was officially pronounced dead on the scene. But what investigators walked into next raised more questions than answers. The doors showed no signs of forced entry, and items inside the apartment suggested the possibility of a robbery gone wrong. But the sheer number of shots fired told a different story. This wasn't just a quick burglary. Something far more darker had unfolded in that small Cleveland apartment. As the crime scene was processed, word of his death began spreading through Cleveland. Family members were woken by calls. Friends and fans flooded social media with messages of unbelief. Carlos Banks, known as Cash Bank, was gone just 3 days before his debut album was set to be released.
Cleveland police investigating a homicide in Slavic Village.
Carlos Banks, a rap artist known as Cash Banks, was shot and killed inside his apartment on Broadway Avenue on Sunday. He was 28 years old. News 5 investigator Sarah Buttison on the case for us today. Sarah, have police identified any suspects?
Damon, Rob, if they have, they're not saying. Today, police would only say homicide investigators are actively working to find Carlos Banks' killer.
But the shock in the community quickly turned into suspicion. The speed at which the news traveled was matched by the speed at which theories began to form. Many who knew Carlos believed his growing fame and his flashy online presence had drawn the wrong kind of attention. His Instagram showed designer clothes, studio sessions, and luxury cars. It showed success. Some thought it also showed opportunity for someone who wanted to harm him. Soon enough, the grief of his loved ones became public. Later that day, dozens of people gathered outside the Rising Apartments for a balloon release in Carlos's memory. Blue balloons, his signature color, were lifted into the sky. Friends, family, and fans spoke about his kindness, his energy, and his talent. His younger brother Highland called him the best big brother anyone could ask for.
The best big brother in the world. Yeah, he was awesome. He taught me a lot of stuff.
His cousin and close friend described how Carlos loved taking care of his family and putting that life into his music.
My cousin liked to get money. He liked it taking care of his family and being flashy, so that's what he expressed in his music.
But the most painful moment came when his 7-year-old son, Zarek, arrived.
My favorite thing was that he took me a lot of stuff.
Standing in front of the crowd, the boy held onto family members as balloons floated overhead. He had lost his father without warning. The outings, the time together, the lessons, now memories.
He wanted me, I wanted him. I wanted him, he wanted me so much.
Those close to Carlos understood at that moment what had really been stolen. Not only a musician, but a father, a husband, a son. And yet, behind the grief, the investigation had barely begun. The Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner confirmed the cause of death, but offered no leads. The Cleveland Police Homicide Unit opened an investigation, but no suspect was named, and no motive was shared.
Was anyone else at the home?
I can't confirm that information at this time.
Officers urged anyone with information to come forward, but in the days that followed, no arrest was made.
The community is obviously in tune to it. Safety is everyone's responsibility, so we ask that the community to come forward. If you have information, to give us a call. That's something that we know the community can assist with.
But just as the official statement stayed quiet, the community kept talking. A local community journalist who had interviewed Carlos several times said people were already reaching out with possible leads. He shared that information with the police. He also said he believed many in the community already knew who was responsible.
The people really believe, because of his fame and his name and what he has, that it was a targeted attack, because He is flashy on social media and he is an artist.
For some, it seemed clear this was a targeted attack linked to his visibility and rising profile. And as the weeks passed, another piece of Carlos's life came into focus. His debut album, originally scheduled for release on January 1, 2025, was released by his family on December 29, the day he was killed. Streams of his music surged as fans and supporters used his songs to keep his memory alive. Lyrics about trust, betrayal, and loyalty were heard differently now. They sounded less like entertainment and more like warnings. But even as his music gained recognition, the case stayed at a standstill. Detectives continued to work behind the scenes, but to the public, there were no updates, no arrests, no clear answers. Carlos's family remained hopeful, but frustrated. His wife kept their children close while dealing with the loss of her husband and the father of her children. And with every day that passed, one question only grew louder. Who killed Carlos Banks and why? Weeks turned into months, and the silence from law enforcement weighed heavily on Carlos's family. Behind closed doors, detectives worked through surveillance footage, questioned neighbors, and traced digital records. They were mapping his final days, looking for the moment when everything turned. For the public, though, there were no updates. It felt as if the case might join the long list of Cleveland homicides that never find answers. But in mid-January 2025, everything changed. On January 15, 2025, the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office announced the indictment of 27-year-old Devon Jones. Investigators concluded that Carlos's murder was not random. Jones and his accomplices had allegedly set their sights on him, believing that his growing image of wealth meant valuables were inside his apartment. The plan was cold and deliberate. A woman was allegedly forced to help them gain entry to Carlos's unit at 5115 Broadway Avenue on December 29, 2024. Once inside, the confrontation escalated. Shots were fired, several of them. Carlos was struck in the head, chest, and abdomen before collapsing to the floor. The group fled, leaving him to die in his own home. The following day should have been a celebration. On January 16, 2025, Carlos would have turned 30 years old. Instead, his family marked the date in mourning, caught between their grief and the first real sign that justice might be possible. The indictment brought a measure of relief, but it also deepened the pain. This was not a random tragedy. It was, as prosecutors allege, a calculated act, carried out by people who saw Carlos not as a man, a husband, or a father, but as a target. On January 17, 2025, Jones appeared in court for his arraignment. The charges, aggravated murder, aggravated burglary, kidnapping, and weapons violations, were read out loud as Carlos's family watched from the benches. He pleaded not guilty, and the judge ordered him held on a $2 million bond. The trial opened on March 24, 2025 in the Cuyahoga County Court of Common Pleas. Over several weeks, jurors heard from witnesses who described the forced entry, the gunfire, and the chaos that followed. The woman who had been coerced to help testified in detail, recounting how she was threatened and how the plan unfolded. Her testimony directly tied Jones to the murder. Forensic experts followed, explaining how ballistic evidence from the crime scene matched a firearm connected to Jones. Medical experts confirmed that Carlos's injuries were extensive, with a fatal gunshot wound to the head. On April 10, 2025, after 7 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a guilty verdict on all major counts. The courtroom erupted with muffled sobs from Carlos's family. Justice had been won, but the cost was unbearable. 1 week later, on April 17, 2025, Jones stood again before the judge for sentencing. The decision was swift: life in prison without the possibility of parole. Before the sentence was read, Carlos's family delivered emotional impact statements. His younger brother Highland spoke through tears, telling the court that Carlos had been more than a sibling. He had been a protector, a guide, and a role model for all 10 of them. His wife described the heartbreak of raising their 2 children alone, explaining that their son still asked when his father was coming home. The most difficult moment came when the court heard the words prepared on behalf of 7-year-old Zarek, who wrote that he missed playing with his dad and wanted him back. The judge called the crime a calculated act of violence and said the sentence reflected both the brutality of the attack and the impact on Carlos's family. For those who loved Carlos, the gavel strike marks the end of the legal process, but beyond the walls of the courtroom, the pain remained. The sentence could not bring him back. It could not restore the father, the husband, or the artist who had been just days away from sharing his first album with the world. In the end, Carlos's name became more than a headline. His death served as a chilling reminder of how ambition, visibility, and violence can collide in ways that devastate entire families. His community, his fans, and those who knew his story were left with a message that cannot be ignored. The choices we make, the envy we provoke, and the dangers left unchecked can cost lives. And in Carlos's case, the cost was unbearably high. Carlos Banks was more than a victim. He was a son, a brother, a husband, and a rising artist whose music was only beginning to break through. His children carry his legacy, and his story now stands as both a warning and a memorial. Violence doesn't just end lives, it fractures families, and its scars echo for generations. By the way, if this story gripped you, we've covered other chilling cases just like this one. Check out the links in the pinned comment below for more true crime stories we've already published. You won't want to miss them. What do you think about it? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this story intriguing, please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.